I'm JP Craddock, and I am here with the one and only, the lovely Miss Stacy D. Love. We are broadcasting here on KUAW Radio, which stands for Knowledge, Understanding,
and Wisdom.
All right, coming up on the show today, we have part 2 of our anxiety series. Last week, we covered diagnosing generalized anxiety disorder. We did a brief assessment, and then I did a full
And I was
assessment.
positive
And the D
on both.
the D was the guinea pig, and you were off the charts with meeting the criteria for the anxiety.
It's there.
Yeah,
it's there.
It's so there. And so for those of you who missed that, you can go to YouTube or our Facebook page and check out that episode. If you are experiencing some anxiety, you can listen to that and assess yourself and diagnose yourself with anxiety. Today, in part 2, we are going to discuss what the treatment for the anxiety disorders looks like. And then next week, we will discuss whether or not a person is born with anxiety or if it is created.
Exactly.
So that should be interesting.
I think it's 50-50 though.
We can't get into it right now.
I know, right?
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for going outside, accepting your phone call.
Oh, my Lord. This is from a person whose phone will ring during the show. D, turn your phone off.
I did.
What's your check-in? What's your check-in, D?
What is my check-in? What happened this week? I don't know. Oh, I was just packing up clothes this weekend. That's it.
Okay, so you don't have anything
Nope.
good.
Hey, friend, Michelle Lee, because you know she's our VIV.
Yes, she is. Okay, here's my check-in.
Uh-oh.
I decided I needed to teach my baby, my Sashi Boo, the proper way to wake me up. Because if you nod off or anything around her, and her technique, her approach to waking me up is just absolutely ridiculous, okay? And for those of you out there,
What did she do? What did she do? Share.
My baby's 3. She will slap me. She'll sit on my head, okay? Because when you can't breathe, you quickly wake up.
She wants you to get up.
She grabbed my eyelid and lifted it up. Out of control. So I decided, okay, I'm going to teach her the proper way to wake me up.
The proper way to wake her dad up.
So I was trying to teach her.
So you were there playing like you were asleep.
I was playing sleep. And so she starts the hitting and then the slapping. Mm-hmm. Then she lifts my eyelid and I'm like not moving.
Okay.
And so she's, Daddy, wake up. So Nadine comes in the room, my wife. And
hold on. So did Nadine knew you were doing this? Okay. Hold on, y'all. We had the professor coming on.
I'm not gonna say no name, but did somebody tell her to go wake your dad?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
Okay.
Nobody told her. She wakes people up when she feel like it.
So Gerald was just doing this experiment, and no one knew the experiment was going on but JP.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Nadine comes in the room. She sees Sashi trying to wake me up. I'm dead still, right? So she calls my name. Then she nudges me. And I'm like, oh my God, go away. I'm trying to teach my baby. Because I'm
she was doing the proper way.
That's not the proper way. The proper way, what I'm trying to teach my baby is to wake me up with kisses. That's the proper way to make me up.
But I just want to know, will the kisses wake you up though? That's what we don't know. Well, we don't know because he haven't been asleep, and the kisses waking him up. Then she gonna hit him.
The kisses.
Okay.
I'm hoping that the kisses will wake me up, because
So
if
this
not,
might not be a good experiment, you guys.
if the kisses, well, we don't know, because The kissing never happened. I want her to wake me up with kisses, give daddy kisses, and then I wake up. And Nadine screwed it up. So this woman starts hitting me and screaming
now
my
she's
name.
getting scared because everybody remember JP used to fall out on us a lot.
I have low blood pressure. I'm the one black person on the planet with low blood pressure.
Low blood pressure.
And I have passed out on occasion. Okay. But I wasn't passed out. This woman who beats a corpse, she thought I was dead, but you beating and slapping and hollering. So finally I was like, I had to open my eyes and say, what is going on right now? So she yells, don't do that. That's not funny. What? I'm trying to teach a lesson to our baby to wake me up with gentle kisses.
So
not sitting
it was
on
a
my
teaching
head.
moment that was not very teachable, I guess.
My baby still don't know how to wake me up. She sat on my head this morning. Oh my God.
Oh, that was a good one. We're going to put that in the record books.
So I'm still working on that. If anyone has any suggestions on how to teach your small kids how to properly wake you up without grabbing your eyelids and lifting them or sitting on your head and suffocating you, I am open to suggestions because her and her mother believes that if you beat and slap a person, that's the problem.
They're going to wake up.
Yeah, I woke up all right. All right, mental health and illness in the news. All right. The Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz, this is the gentleman, I'm using that term loosely because he ain't a gentleman. This is the person who killed 17 people at a high school in Parkland, Florida in 2018. Well, they are having his...
I almost forgot about that one.
Because there's so many mass shooters that it's hard to keep up with them. I had to look up the information because I confused him with a different shooter. Mm-hmm. Okay. And his death penalty trial is going on. Here's what's interesting. A doctor described him as, quote, a peculiar child, end of quote. And this doctor treated him at the age of 8 and said that he exhibited anxiety and, quote, obvious aggression. Now, first, let me say this, because we are covering the anxiety disorders today. There is no, I don't want this to sound like there's a correlation between anxiety and aggression, because the truth of the matter is anxiety is rooted in fear, which is kind of the opposite of aggression. So I don't want those of you who are tuning in for this series on anxiety, and I don't want you to take it like we are saying that if you have anxiety, you're aggressive and dangerous. They are actually kind of opposites, but there are people who experience both anxiety and aggression, and some people who have anxiety, the anger from feeling anxious can make them lash out, but that is not typically the case. But this doctor was just saying, and the doctor wasn't saying that there was comorbidity, which is the coexistence of two diagnoses. He was just saying the boy was anxious and he was aggressive.
He was peculiar.
And he was peculiar. Now, a neighbor really broke it down. One of the neighbors testified that, quote, you could look at him and see that something wasn't right.
Something wasn't. That must have been a black old woman. They would most definitely say, boy, you can just look at him and tell something just ain't right with that boy. We're going to say that was a black neighbor, everybody, okay?
This was an old white man, actually.
Was it?
Oh, he had more to say. This is so.
Let's hear what else he said.
Good. He said, something's off. There was never any sense of normalcy.
Wow.
This boy did not go bad. He was never
ready.
Right. That's what the neighbor said. This
he must
boy
came from the north. This boy
did not go bad. He was never right.
Never right.
Now, This is why I'm
Wow.
covering this under mental health and illness in the news, because this brings back the question of nature versus nurture when it comes to sociopathy. Are sociopaths born
that way?
sociopaths, psychopaths, or is it created? Because from what this neighbor and the doctor at 8, he was aggressive at 8. What they are saying is this boy was never right. Which, and here's the thing, the clinical term is sociopathy. The layman's term is evil. So we are taking a look at, are people born evil or do they become evil and sociopathic?
So I'm wondering what happened between 0 and 8.
See, now the D is challenging that the
I'm a
boy
challenge.
was born evil.
No, I'm
A
I'm
lot
challenging
could
that.
happen between
0
birth
and
and
8. Oh yeah, most definitely.
Now, and I don't know what the history and the background on the parents, on his upbringing, all
Was
of
he
these
ever in
different
foster
things,
care?
like what his life was like, because this still could have been created. I struggle with believing that people are born sociopaths, that people are born evil.
It's hard for me to believe that also.
I just struggle with the
I
Lord
struggles with it because
just
he doesn't
turning
make.
somebody over to the devil at birth. Like I struggle with that.
I
I'm
do
not
too.
sure.
I do too.
So
And if you're a believer, you most definitely would struggle with that also.
yes, but I do want us to look at both sides of it. There are people who have been described as always being off and different and having sociopathy or evilness, torturing animals, different things like that. And when it comes to mass shooters, serial killers, there have been many who had what would be considered normal parents. But
So they say.
parents, so they say, and sometimes the parents are like, we don't know what's wrong with that boy. The rest of our kids is fine. Now, we
And
always
maybe the
had
kids-
problems with little Johnny.
Little Johnny, but we don't know what the kids did to them. It's just so. it's
There's
just
a
so
lot
much.
of factors that could have came into play that would cause a kid to become sociopathic. And so without having that background
And we
information,
used to have a lot on our caseloads from Wanda Mental Health. And once we start digging digging,
Kids that
then we
did
be like, pow, there it is.
kids that was doing a lot at
Yes,
8.
and then we will figure
younger.
out.
Yeah, and
Pow, there it is.
now, see, you just mentioned the next thing that I was going to go into. When we worked at the Community Mental Health Center, we had kids as young as 2.
Yes.
So when this doctor, most likely a pediatrician, was seeing this kid and noticed anxiety and aggression at the age of 8, I would hope that he referred to mental health
Hopefully.
services. Because at 8, you are old enough to do talk therapy at 8.
Most definitely. At 8, you're what? 3rd grade?
That kid, that's a 3rd grader. At 8, that kid is able to do play therapy, talk therapy, able to be fully assessed, able to
Fully.
be medicated.
Yes.
And so they really needed to go further back, because a lot can happen between birth and 8, and some treatment could have taken place. If people notice, like, something off with that boy. Something is off with that boy.
And let's try to figure it out.
Because the neighbor reenacted the kid running through the street with a airsoft gun, like he was shooting up the place. This was when he was a little kid. And so I'm like, these are red flags. And so our message to parents out there, to people who you have friends who you feel like is something with their kid,
It's
is
not right.
as the neighbor said, that boy wasn't never right.
They never right.
And this is what happens when people have a friend whose kid is, quote, not right, they don't say anything because people get so offended if you say something.
Some
you cannot just easily say to your friend,
JP, how would you do it? Because I'm gonna let everyone know, JP is that friend that's going to say something, and he don't care if you stop talking to him. So JP, how would you go into that? Friend, something about that baby just ain't right. But I'm gonna give you the technical terms about it. Let me bring up my DSM.
Let me tell you, the D is right. I have to say something, right? Like, ooh, this kid.
See, this is, we're going to give both of our ways how we're going to say it. We're going to do the JP way, and then we're going to do the Stacy D way, because I have had to do that before.
Okay.
So let me see how you did.
Here's how I would do it. And you're right. I would approach it more clinically so that people don't get defensive. Mm-hmm. And so what you do, to those of you who need to have this conversation with your friend over their child, is what I would say is...
And hold on. Let's say the child is, let's give an age on it.
We can do this 8. What age?
We're going to do 8?
Let's do 8-year-old.
Let's do 8.
Yeah, because the neighbor noticed that the boy wasn't right at 8. Okay, so...
ain't never been right.
If I had a friend...
8 years old.
Whose kid wasn't right and ain't never been right. Okay. What I would say, I would start out by providing some psychoeducation on child development. And the way I would do it is say, Johnny seems to have a little bit of anxiety and he's kind of aggressive also. And at his age, kids don't typically have that level of anxiety and aggression. See, that's how you get your friends' attention, because they like, wait, what, really? Because a lot of times people do not know. They're like,
it becomes normal to them because they're dealing with it every day.
They're dealing with it every day. And when you are raising a kid, sometimes you're in a bubble if you are not around a lot of other kids and things go unnoticed. So that's the first thing I would do, to open the door. And then I would just say, it might be a good idea to go ahead and have him assessed, because if he is anxious and if it's playing a role in him being aggressive, it could or could not. Early intervention can do wonders for a kid, because the parent knows they're struggling with the aggression, right? Even though they're like, okay, I hadn't thought about it not being normal, but he does punch me in the face a lot. Early intervention and assessment, you can, I'm going to give you the name and number of a therapist, because I come prepared to refer, okay? And you can contact this therapist to get Johnny assessed to see if it is a clinical level of anxiety and aggression. Now, that's how I would handle it.
I think you did that really good.
Because
let me tell y'all something about JP. JP kicks down the door, but this time he did not kick down the door.
Well, because, let me tell you why. My sister, I watched my 2 sisters tell a family member that something was wrong with their kid in the worst way. They were laughing and pointing out that something was wrong with the kid. The kid was exhibiting some bizarre behaviors. Very. And I was a young kid, but even as a young kid, I knew, I don't think this is the way you tell somebody something's wrong with their kid. They got cussed up one wall, down another wall. They got called names that I ain't heard since that day. So, as I learned at an early age, that is not the proper way to... People love their child, and people are naturally defensive of their child. And so you have to be careful how you address problems within a child. Now,
That's
if
true.
I'm dealing with an adult, because I'm very direct and upfront with grown people, like a grown person, even a teenager, I'm just coming in. But when it comes to young kids, parents, No, you have to be gentle. How would you do it, D?
I would go a lot of the way that you, well, the way I did was a lot like how you did it. Actually, I was in their home, and I was actually on the floor, and I was playing with the little boy, and he was playing pretty decent with me. Everybody loves Stacy D. Stacy D love the kids.
The D love the kids.
The D love the kids. And so I was on the floor and I was playing with them, and I really observed the problems. And then I looked up at my friend and I was just like, I'm seeing some things and that's really concerning to me. And I'm like, let's have the baby go in the room and me and you can discuss it. So she put the baby in the room, and I was like, these was the key points that I hit. JP hit some points. I'm like, girl, he's running you crazy. We need to get him some help. And hold on, we finna call the people right now so he can be, so we can get him on the right track.
He running you
I'm
crazy.
like, and guess what? You might even be able to get a check. But while we was in 2 weeks, we had her. The baby got assessed. We did an emergency, got assessed. I called Social Security with her.
Oh, wow.
And in 3 months, she was getting a check. She was getting someone to come in and help babysit, but was psychosocial. And it was and she tells me right now, Stacy, thank you. And the good thing about it is that her son started at KU this year as a freshman in regular classes. So that's good
great.
thing about intervention early. I'm sorry.
Early intervention.
Oh my God, here go the D being a punk again.
Wait, what are you talking about?
I'm just getting emotional.
Oh, yeah, because she's sensitive.
I'm so sensitive now. Oh my God, I don't know what's wrong with me.
But I like how you just described that by people, please be gentle when you talking to people about their kids. Because if you offend them and they become defensive, they're not going to hear and absorb anything that you have said. So you have failed to actually help that child. When you focus on what is in the best interest of a child, you will approach that parent appropriately, because your ultimate goal is to get the child the help that they need.
Is to help the child. And also when you come, just like JP said, when you come with a problem, also have that solution or some referrals for them. Because basically I walked her through everything. It took us 2 days, but I walked her through everything and I was right there with her. So that was real good.
Okay, here's my next mental health and illness in the news story. Nick Cannon is expecting baby number 9.
Number 9? Wow.
He has 9 babies with 5 different women.
2 by your girl.
2 by my girl, because I love some Mariah. Now, check this out. This is what I want us to think about. If a woman had 9 babies by 5 different men, she would be called a hoe.
He'd be a hoe. But at least he was married to at least one of them. He was married to at least one.
Mariah.
He was married to Mariah.
I'm just saying.
He'll be a hoe. She'll be a hoe.
We have to be aware of our double standards in order to change those double standards. Okay?
Correct.
Because people are not calling Nick Cannon a hoe.
I did. Nick Cannon, you a hoe.
Well, you a woman calling him a hoe. That's different.
Because men think it's something cute sometimes.
But if a man meets a woman with 9 babies by 5 different men,
most of the time he's gonna run.
Well, yeah, first thing he tried to
he's gonna run. He's gonna get away. Bye now.
After he get away, he might call her a hoe.
He gonna call her a hoe.
Right. And so we have to be aware.
And a no good hoe too.
And here's something that we also have to work on.
I wonder what he brings. Sorry, JP. I wonder what he bring the babies all Happy Meals.
Oh my God, that story.
Oh goodness.
He can afford to buy the whole
McDonald's.
the whole menu for all those kids. Here's something else that we have to be careful of, which is self-awareness, because I caught myself in hearing this story. I caught myself wondering, what mental illness does he have what diagnosis could this be? And I had to catch myself and say, wait a minute. Why does a person have to be mentally ill because they got 9 babies with 5 women? Maybe he just likes kids. Because I love kids.
Because he's not in the news about no child support not happening.
Well, because he got money. The fool got money.
And still making money.
I wouldn't have a problem with having 9 kids. Bring on 9 kids. I'm D, why you? Well, my mother was a foster parent. So I grew up in a house. My mother would have like 12 foster kids at one time. So I'm accustomed to a house being full of kids, but I had to stop myself. And this is something that I tell therapists, especially interns and, entry-level therapists, be careful that as a therapist, you do not just run around automatically assuming that somebody is mentally ill and diagnosing everybody and their mama. You do not need, we don't need to do that. If there's not a problem, because there's not, I mean.
Maybe we need to get Cannon on the phone. Nick Cannon, call us.
We need to talk to Nick Cannon. But here's something I noticed. I have never heard a negative story about his parenting, about the lives of these children. And so, as we have talked about on the show, when it comes to a diagnosis, a person only gets a diagnosis not only if they have symptoms, but if it is causing a problem. And there's no problem. And so that's why I stopped myself.
And women still want to have babies by him.
Well, there's plenty of women. That's like a meal ticket if you have Nick Cannon's baby. There's women probably lined up outside his mansion like, can I have your next baby?
You know what? He's not aging well neither. Maybe that's because of the 8 children. No.
Well, that many kids will age you. But what do you mean, D? Is he wrinkled or something?
Yeah, I've seen him on TV.
Well, he got a lot of kids.
He got a lot of kids, and he was really looking his age. I'm just thinking of him as him on Nickelodeon.
Oh, he started on Nickelodeon?
Yeah, that's where he started.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, here's what my thoughts are. Because you said about women being willing to have his baby. That is between birth and when that kid turns 18, those women probably don't have to work at all. Because that has to be a fat child support check. But I did stop myself from just like, I wonder what could be wrong with him that he keeps making babies back to back. And I stopped myself like.
How old is Nick Cannon? The research is on about how old Nick Cannon is. I know he should be in his 40s.
Yeah, he's younger than Mariah.
Yes, she got her a youngster.
Yeah.
Mariah's around our age.
He's probably in his 40s, yeah. So, I got a feeling he's 41.
Oh, my God. He's really aging now. He looked really aged when I seen him.
Well, all them kids.
On TV.
All them kids.
Wow, he's still young.
Okay, last mental health and illness in the news so we can get to the question of the day. Biden dismissed $10,000 to $20,000 in student loans. Okay.
I need more than that.
Here's my thought. That was my thought. That is a drop. Okay,
in a
first,
bucket.
let me first say it's a good start. Okay, and I think he was aiming it more, but he was met with opposition, and the Republicans are protesting. They're saying that it's not fair that people are getting their student loans dismissed. Here's something I want people to think about, because I have a friend whose student loans, she paid off her student loans, but here's something interesting. I
have a couple of friends that have done that. I was like, why?
But of all of my friends, and the majority of my frat brothers have at least a master's degree. I don't know anybody with a graduate level degree who has paid off their student loans. And so that's the thing is people people think about it just from the perspective of, well, if you have a bachelor's degree and if you manage to get $20,000 worth of student loans paid off, that should only leave you with maybe $10,000 if you went to a state school. If you went to any other school, you still got a ton of student loans left. But here's the problem. Let's take mental health, for example. When I graduated with $30-something thousand in student loans, this was way back far.
That was way in the beginning.
Oh yeah, I'm well
We in the 80s.
six figures. I'm well in the six figures.
Oh, I'm in the six figures also. Because of interest?
It's all
It's all interest.
But here's the problem with our profession. When I started working in mental health with a bachelor's degree, my first job
$5.50
that
an
I
hour.
quit was $8-something an hour.
Woo!
And
You
that was
making
KBC.
money.
And I worked there for 2 days because another mental health center offered me 25 cents more.
We was running for that 25 cent, weren't
And
we?
for 25 cents,
And
I
listen,
rolled out.
And he went all the way across town. KVC was down the street. But he he drove out $2 worth of gas to go get that quarter. I'm just
Let me tell
saying.
you,
But we
the
went
D-
to Amoco and was able to get 5 cents extra because you paid with cash and not credit card.
Listen to this. The D is actually right.
I know.
KBC's mental health center is in Wyandotte County.
Wyandotte
I
County.
drove all the way to Crittenton, which is way across. That's across town in Kansas and all the way across town in Missouri for that 25
For that
cents.
25 cents.
But I still was not able to pay those student loans.
Hell no.
And even so, for years I couldn't. And even after becoming a therapist, because they have where if you have a degree in social work, you can get your loans dismissed. The problem, though, is the mental health center that we worked at, which did not pay enough to be paying those student loan payments.
Exactly.
But despite working there, it's nonprofit, but it's not owned by the county.
Yeah, it's
and
nonprofit
so you cannot get
for
your
a
loans
profit. Couldn't get it dismissed.
Right. Whereas people who work at like Johnson County Mental Health, which is the community mental health center in the next county over, they're able to get their loans dismissed.
But guess what? They paid more money also.
And that they paid a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But
it was so hard for us.
Well, and they don't
get
hire
in.
Right. And they don't hire entry-level therapists. Mm-mm. You have to have your clinical level of licensure,
That's
which
true.
takes a minimum
2 years.
of 2 years to get it.
At least
so I was
2 years.
I was broke working under my bachelor's degree, and then after getting
the master's
through graduate school and racking up a ton of more loans, I had to work at a community mental health center that was willing to hire people fresh out of school, and they did not pay nearly as much. Couldn't work at the mental health center where I could get my loans dismissed. And so this is what people have to think about, because something that's coming out in the news is, some of the Republican politicians are saying, well, it's not fair that we as taxpayers have to pay these people's student loans because Biden is dismissing them. But it's like, no, hold up a minute, fool. There are many people. Because my wife spent 15, 16 years at the community mental health center. It is a community mental health center, the same as the one owned by the county in the next county over. But the difference is she can't get her loans dismissed and they can, just because of who owns it, even though they both are nonprofit.
Nonprofit for profit, though.
And so, it's easy for teachers to get their loans dismissed. They got to work in the hood.
Got to work in the hood.
And I have seen
but they make better money in the hood, though.
Not better than if they was in Johnson County.
Well, yeah, Johnson County.
But yes, and I have gotten plenty of entry level teachers.
Johnson County's the hood now.
entry-level teachers in therapy who are from rural communities, who go to school, get their teaching degree, and then they have to teach in the hood. Some of these
Can't
people
handle it.
never even saw
A
black folks
person.
until they went to college, and now they teaching in the inner city, and they end up having to come to therapy because it's overwhelming. But they are able to get their loans dismissed. As soon as those loans are dismissed, they roll out.
Roll out.
They roll out. So, I just wanted to address that when it comes to discussing the topic of student loans, consider all these other factors. There are a lot of other factors. A lot of people who, there are professions that require a degree, but they don't compensate you for that degree in a manner where you can pay your loans. Now, there are countries, because I know someone who is French, and his whole college education was free.
Wow.
Because he said, well, we don't pay for college in France.
They don't pay for health insurance either.
Right. Right. And so I really hope that America moves in the direction of free higher education, because the more people who go to college and get a degree, it helps the economy, because they're able to buy houses and this and that and this and that, because they're not paying $1,000 a month for student loans. And so,
and that's putting on the income versus $1,000 a month.
Right. And so the whole community, which is where Biden's coming from, he's like, we are going to free up people to be able to buy houses and other things. And so, you know, to those who, you know, just have a bachelor's degree and you've managed to pay these loans off, because, you know, I know people who have degrees in engineering and accounting, and those are professions that when you graduate, you should be making enough money to pay your student loans. But those of us who are helping professionals,
have to have a master's to make any money.
You have to have a master's degree or above to make any money as a helping professional. And you have to, the cost of the education is not compensated for once you get the job. But this is the sacrifice that we make, because we're trying to literally help people.
Help people. Okay, and then it's a little subject I want to talk about too, real quick.
Okay, because I'm agitated.
You about to get more agitated.
Oh,
so
Lord.
when I worked at insurance companies, why they try to put an RN who's a certificate on the same levels as my master's social work degree? We were making
she had
the same
associates
amount.
in nursing.
No, she just had an RN. That's a certificate.
No, that's the LPN.
No, an RN is a certificate. If you're not a BS RN, which means you're
BSc.
a bachelor's
Right.
with a nursing.
Right.
Yeah, so they are RNs and put them on the same level as my master's in social work.
Yeah, and that's but that's what I was saying. If they don't have a BSN, they have that associates.
No, it's
but
just
they're
an
still
RN.
RN.
They're RN, and they're just a certificate.
Doesn't it take 2 years to get that? The RN, not the LPN.
The LPN, I know, is 18 months. So the RN may be 2 years. But it's still not an associate, because they're not taking all the other classes for an associate. It is a certificate. It is a certificate.
And they're well paid, because I know some 6-figure
RN
nurses who they have that either associates or whatever it is. It's not a bachelor's in nursing.
No, it's not a bachelor's. No.
Now,
that's ridiculous.
I think the BSN RNs do make more than the associates RNs.
But how do you put yourself up to me and my master's in social work?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they start off making way more than a master's level social worker.
Yes.
A nurse.
Yes.
Nurses make good money.
They make good money.
People think nurses don't make good money. Yeah, they
make great money. And do not be a traveling nurse. Whew. So that just used to really make me mad at the insurance companies.
Well, yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's get to our question of the day. What is the treatment for the anxiety disorders? All right. In general, when it comes to the anxiety disorders, the treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, this show is called Cognitions.
Cognitions.
Speaking the Unspeakable with JP and Stacy D. So, those of you who are regular listeners, y'all should know what cognitions are, but I'm going to go ahead and cover it again. Anyway, cognitions are thoughts, okay? And so, the cognitive behavioral therapy is a balance of doing therapy around the person's thoughts while also putting behavioral interventions in place to further combat the anxiety. Okay, the cognitive therapy piece is such things as identifying cognitive distortions, which are thinking errors, faults that increase a person's anxiety. Okay, and then replacing those with positive, adaptive thoughts that are grounded in reality. All right, and so here's an example of a cognitive distortion that I hear all the time in therapy. Clients who are struggling with social anxiety, and in their mind, they feel like they're not interesting to talk to, they're boring, they're going to say something stupid, nobody wants to talk to them. Those thoughts create anxiety because our thoughts dictate our feelings. Anxiety is an emotion. How we think dictates how we feel. For example, if I'm in public and a person bumps into me, if I think to myself, now he bumped into me because he's just being rude and disrespectful because I'm a black man and they feeling entitled.
What
Those
you gonna do?
Thoughts are going to lead to the feeling of anger, which then leads to the behavior of possibly punching somebody in the face or pushing him back. Yes. And so we can control our emotions and our behavior by first controlling our thoughts. Because if someone bumps into me in public and I instead think to myself, oh, well, they probably didn't see me, and they go on about their business, right? Well, instead of that, that's not a thought that's going to lead to anger. That's a thought that's going to lead to me feeling just as euthymic, feeling as good as I felt before
the even
it happened. And instead of punching somebody, I'm still over there, feeling the oranges and looking, trying to get my produce. Okay, so when it comes,
he's in the grocery store.
Yeah, I'm in the grocery store, and so when it comes to the cognitive therapy, the first thing I have clients do is write down and track all of their negative thoughts and bring them into therapy, because I know that those thoughts are negative and creating anxiety. So we have to attack those thoughts. That's the cognitive therapy. The behavioral therapy, there's two different types depending upon the anxiety, okay? One type of behavioral therapy is systematic desensitization, and prolonged exposure is another type. Systematic desensitization is, I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say if a person has a phobia, which is one of the anxiety disorders. If a person has a phobia and it's something that they really cannot avoid in life, then systematic desensitization is you expose them to that.
Here go the phobia. Driving over bridges.
Perfect. It's hard to drive without ever going over a bridge. Okay? You ain't driving no damn where if you can't drive over a bridge. You're going to be late everywhere. Okay, and so the systematic desensitization, what I do with a client is I start them off by getting them to just drive up to a bridge, not going over it, just drive up to it. Okay, that's the behavioral intervention to get them to slowly desensitize to being in the proximity of bridges. And then what I'm going to do is get them to gradually enter onto a bridge, okay? But you don't push a person, you want to do it gradually. It's like if a person has, let's go back to social anxiety. If a person has social anxiety, I'm not going to have them go to a crowded place. I'm not going to send them to Walmart.
The club, Walmart, yeah.
Not the club, period. But I ain't going to send them to Walmart early in the month during the most crowded time of day and tell them to spend 3 hours in Walmart. No, I'm going to start off by having them just, can you go sit in the parking lot at Walmart? Just, and see the crowd. And then systematically desensitizing them by, okay, we're going to go in Walmart just for 5 minutes, and you don't have to go all over Walmart, because in 5 minutes you can't do nothing but walk in, go over to some patty pies, and check out the patty pies.
There you go to patty pies now. Just go get a cart. Just go get a cart and wipe your cart down and then go on back out. You just gave somebody else something. 5
minutes. And then you gradually increase the amount of time that they are spending in that anxious setting. So they go from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Next thing you know, you got them all up in there for like an hour or two. They almost going
grocery shopping.
And they have desensitized. Here's my favorite example. I think I've used this example before, but a person who has a fear of needles, who gets a phobia of needles, and they get diagnosed with diabetes, they initially freak out at having to give themselves a shot every day. But if you,
or even check their glucose reading,
even that. But if you fast forward and catch up with them a month later, after they've been giving themselves a shot 3 times a day, they have desensitized to it. They grab a needle. This is my sister, because she used to have fear of needles, but the heifer, she give herself her insulin.
Live or die. Live or die.
They able to have a conversation while they doing it. And it's like, you used to be terrified. Oh, I'm over it. They have systematically desensitized.
Desensitized.
And will even say, I barely even feel it now.
Don't even feel it now. Which those needles are so small and so sharp that you won't feel it. It's ding.
But a person with a phobia, they think they feel the needle before it even gets
they can just
in their skin. They look. You get close to them. Food ain't even touched you yet. Now,
but that's just the same way, like when we go to get our children their shots. We'll turn their face from them while they stick them, and sometimes they wouldn't even know it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Here's what happened yesterday. I took my baby, my Sashi Boo, had to get a shot. Okay. Because my father-in-law, who's a retired surgeon, graduated from Ivy League school, he was saying that COVID vaccination is not going to hurt her. Y'all need to go ahead and do it. And so we've been putting it off, but we about to go to Tennessee.
Urgent care every day.
My baby asked to go to the doctor. She asked to go to the doctor. She's like, my stomach hurts. I need to go to the doctor. And I took her. And the doctor was like, well, because she is constipated a lot, so that's why her stomach is hurting. She was right, like her stomach is hurting.
You start giving her some prune juice and put a little sugar in it.
That might work better than what the doctor said. A little prune juice.
And put some sugar in it.
Well, let me tell you, that doctor, because she doesn't remember the last time she got a shot, which turned into a scene. Because she doesn't remember, I just sat there and acted like it was nothing. So the nurse practitioner came over. She had the needle. I didn't turn her face away. I didn't do any of that.
Really?
I held her on my lap and acted like it was nothing to it. The woman gave my baby that shot. She didn't wince. She didn't cry. She just looked. And she had this puzzled look on her face like, I don't know if I should. Did that hurt? Should I be screaming and crying? But I just looked. I said, oh, good job, Sashi Boo. Good job, baby. She's like, oh, I ain't supposed to be crying right now. And she chilled. No problems. I said, I cannot believe it.
That was good. So we're gonna, Sashi Boo.
And we're going to kind of cover this next week when we talk about whether or not anxiety, are people born with it, or is it created? Because if I would have handled that differently, she would have been freaking out for the woman even gave her the shot. And she'd have a fear of getting shots. She took that shot and was like, is it time to go bye-bye? Okay, so as far as the behavioral interventions, systematic desensitization, prolonged exposure if the person has PTSD, which is having the person in therapy go over their traumatic experience. This sounds horrible. Let me prepare everybody. This intervention sounds horrible. Have them go over, they sit and they close their eyes and they recount the tragic experience over and over again in first person as if it is currently happening. I had a paramedic who had showed up at the scene and there was a child decapitated. Both of the kids were killed. And so he had PTSD. And so the prolonged exposure therapy, that is the requirement of it. And he had to tell that story. You know, I'm riding in the ambulance, I'm pulling up in first person over and over, but you do desensitize to it because you're no longer avoiding it. When we avoid traumatic memories, they spread through us like a cancer.
It does.
And so in order to get through it, you have to desensitize to it. Now, this doesn't mean that at the end of therapy, he was not he was still feeling sad and heartbroken that these children were killed in this accident, but it was not affecting him on a level where he couldn't go to work, where he couldn't function. So that's the prolonged exposure piece. Now, but when it comes to anxiety, because some anxiety you want to desensitize to if it is aspects of life that a person really needs to deal with. When it comes to generalized anxiety, which is just being stressed out, the therapeutic approach is different. You want to eliminate the stressor that is causing that anxiety.
Eliminate the stressor.
And so
person, place, or thing.
Yes. I had a client this week who, on his off days, his wife fills up the schedule with tons of stuff to do. Fun stuff, but it'll be so much that they have a rigid schedule. Like, we got to be here at 12, and then we got to be here at 2, and he's like, I can't enjoy these activities because we're rushed, we're doing too much. I'm anxious and stressed out. I don't want him to desensitize to and get used to that because she shouldn't be doing that.
That's true.
So I was like, no, we're going to work on communication skill development because you're going to go home and have a chat with your wife about not doing that.
Can we just have one thing?
Yes.
And let's enjoy it to the fullest.
Why stress me out? How we having
on
fun?
My off day.
Right. And some people do this with vacations. They will fill the vacation with so much because they want to see everything that a city has to offer. Don't do that. Go back to the city again if you can't see it.
Go back again.
Have a rough outline.
And some of those cities you just have to visit several times.
Yes, like New Orleans that I was.
Yes.
I went every year for a while, and
right.
Because Patty was the headliner at the Essence Music
Patty
Festival. I had to see Patty every year.
Patty!
And so for some anxiety, we have to step back and take a look at how we are living our lives. What things are we doing that is causing stress, and eliminate those things. Now, D, since you met the criteria, are there some things that you need to eliminate that would decrease your stress and anxiety?
Oh, yes. And I'm eliminating it.
It is just one thing?
Yeah, just one thing.
Probably a list of things.
No, seriously. I can handle stuff. It doesn't bother me. But, one or two things just to really get up underneath your skin and you just can't see it. And they got to go. That's why I was packing up clothes this weekend.
Right. And the solution is not to desensitize and learn to live with those things.
Nope.
Those things need to go.
It needs to go. Bye-bye now.
All right. So that is the other behavioral intervention for as far as the cognitive behavioral therapy for the anxiety disorders. So when it comes to, we've covered how to handle generalized anxiety, social anxiety. I gave an example, systematic desensitization, phobias. I had a phobia. I had allurophobia, which is fear of cats. Now, the
His
cognitive...
dislike of cats made him have the phobia.
Well, I don't know what came first, but here's what the cognitive behavioral therapy was. The cognitive therapy, I attribute it to the fact that I was never around cats as a kid. I used to believe that black folks didn't have cats because they get on the counters.
It was real.
And their hair be everywhere.
They wasn't dealing with that. No black woman wasn't dealing with that.
I don't remember any of my family members
Our
having
friends.
cats until I was 18, and one of my aunts got a cat, and I was like, what is that thing doing here?
And everybody was talking about her.
Everybody was like, that cat, you see that cat on her counter?
Don't you eat nothing from her
That
house.
cat was licking out the sugar bowl.
Don't eat nothing from her house. There's no need in you bringing nothing to Christmas dinner because you're going to take it right back with you.
We worked with a woman at the mental health center who would bring me.
She was the cat woman.
She would bring me sweets. Oh, I I know who you talking about. The cat woman who was obsessed with cats. She would say hello by meowing at you.
Yeah.
And I had a lurophobia. She would freak me out every day. Cause she walk up behind you and meow. Oh, it's Alpha. Get her away from me. That was bizarre. But there was another woman at the mental health center who liked to bake, and I have a sweet tooth, and she would bring me cakes and cookies and all these things.
And I'd be in there
practically
talking
every day.
about him. I'd be like, I know you're not finna eat that.
But let me tell you, one day, our friend, I had my back turned and she had came into my office, and before I could turn around, she had grabbed one of these cookies and took a bite out of it. She had one of them cat hairs hanging out of her mouth. I said, oh my God, put that cookie down, put that cookie down. When she turned that cookie over, it had a swirl of cat hair mixed in. I almost got sick. I said, listen, she brings me these desserts.
And we throw them in the trash.
What I always do is say, oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I love the sweets. Let me tell you, I'm going to tear them up at lunch. I got to resist until lunch. And then when she would leave, I would throw them away because it was the hairiest food I ever seen. And when you have a cat phobia, you can't handle cat hair all up in your food. Now, the cognitive behavioral therapy for allurophobia, let me cover real quick and then we got to go. The cognitive therapy was I had to identify my negative thoughts about cats and replace them with factual information about cats, because all I had ever seen about cats was horror movies from back in the day. None of my family had cats, and so I had to eliminate the negative stereotypes. Now what happened is it backfired, and I ended up learning some things about cats that made the phobia worse. I learned about the hairballs. I learned that when they rub up against you, they not being sweet. They secrete a light oil from behind their shoulder blades and their cheeks. So when they rub up against you, they are marking you. That is so damn nasty. So the cognitive therapy was backfiring because my phobia was increasing. And then the behavioral intervention, I had to spend small amounts of time in the presence of cats and increase it. But the student who told me we could use her cats, she didn't tell me they were crazy. So we're sitting having a study group. This is in grad school, and the cat jumped on my shoulder, jumped down on the table, licked my food, and scurried down the table. I jump up screaming and running. I'm running into chairs, knocking over lamps. I'm trying to get up out this woman.
So is it safe to say, once again, JP had another experience that went backfired? That's 2 experiences.
That's me trying to give myself therapy. That's me trying to give myself therapy.
Cut it.
Right. All right. That is our show for today. We will wrap up our series on the anxiety disorders next week, and I will explain how I did eventually get cured. My wife helped me to get 80%
Who's another
cured.
therapist?
80% cured of my cat phobia. So we'll talk about that next week. But thank you for joining us today. And remember, worry about nothing.
And pray about everything.
Thank you, and God bless.
Bye-bye.